If I'm going to be totally honest, I don't like my body. And I stare at myself in the mirror, turn myself around in a 360-degree rotation multiple times a day. Probably every time I pass by a mirror, I do this. As if somehow when I just ate carrots at lunch, now all of a sudden I've gained weight. I have to say I'm a bit obsessed about it. Unhealthily so. I'm sure I have body dysmorphic disorder. I criticize my face, every wrinkle, every hair out of place. I'm a bit unhealthy about this. And today I'm sitting with my friend who also has negative thoughts about her body, but she's worked really hard. This is Svetlana, but I'm going to call her Lana Chernienko, and she's an advocate for a positive body image, and she's also an influencer on Instagram, talking about mental health and loving yourself and loving your body and embracing yourself. So we're just going to have a real chat about how hard it is to be a woman in a world where everybody has an idea of what is perfect and beautiful.
Where everybody's airbrushed on social media with all the applications that you can use to make yourself look better.
Yeah, and all the filters.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I have this conversation with many women, and I think that it's a general topic that every woman's having an issue with. I think it hits more when you're over 40, honestly. Like, you do have issues when you're in your teens and 20s, but every, evolution of age, you feel it differently. And I believe when I turned 40, it was a different way I was looking at my body. I was critiquing every little thing, and like you, I ate something and I was turning around in the mirror going, I'm going to gain weight, let me start obsessing over this, or I lost too much weight, because it's one or the other that's been with me. And for me, because of my anxiety and depression, I do sometimes tend to overeat and, try and stuff my emotions. So dealing with my body is not easy when my body, for my job, being a body positive model, is on display all the time. And I'm trying to push back at the stereotypes that you have to be, skinny or like a Victoria's Secret model, and it's not realistic.
It's not realistic, but it starts when we're so young, because if you think about like a Barbie doll, I played with Barbies a bit, not tons. I actually played like with those little people in the little houses and stuff, but I did have Barbies. And then when I, had kids and reintroduced Barbies, these are our images, right? Girl, big boobs, clearly something that I am not struggling with. I have no boobs, so, which is kind of good. Actually, this part doesn't bother me. Interestingly enough, I don't care that I don't have boobs. That's one thing that has never bothered me. But just to go back to the Barbie thing, that's how it starts. When we're young kids, we're looking at these images, or even the lifestyle, the princesses, and just in terms of women and how those princesses look and what they're wearing and their bodies and stuff. It starts so young, and it's like we're taught at such a young age that part of our value as a person has to do with how we look.
How we look, and that's very difficult to deal with, and I have, I look at myself in the mirror sometimes and I'm like, okay, this is a new thing that I decided to do. And this is what I was teaching somebody actually just recently at a boot camp. Somebody asked me, how do you look at yourself in the mirror and think positive thoughts? I said, okay, what I do is I've actually stood in the mirror naked and looked at myself, and rather than pointing out the things that I did not like, I started pointing out the things that I did like and focused on those things and said, you know what? I'm pretty great. Okay, my boobs are pretty awesome considering I've had 4 children. I started really looking at my body in a different light rather than saying, well, I don't like this and I don't like that and I don't like this. Because what happens is already then it stuffs this negativity down in our minds and in our throats, and it's always in the back of our mind. So that's the first exercise that I started doing, and I started teaching other women to do that.
Before you get to the second exercise, let me ask you a question about that, because you said, I look in the mirror and I say, well, I have pretty good boobs considering I've had 4 kids. But even that statement, considering I, see, already it's like there's something negative about that instead of like, I have great boobs. It shouldn't be based on age or what experiences we've had, pregnancy or not. It should just be, I have great boobs. So even that, you who is like very conscientious about this, still has some even negative words that are coming out.
Of course, and I always tell people, nobody's perfect. Just because I'm out there doing body positivity, it's not an easy place to be, because I have the internet trolls, why are you always half naked? I'm like, first of all, I'm there to do body positivity, and I'm not always naked, okay? Because that's not naked. I know how to do naked. So I'm out there, but I'm like, do you read my captions? Because anybody who's taken the time to be on my Instagram, I always share the moment or an experience that what I went through in my life, or a moment, how I was feeling. You might see an image and say, wow, she's beautiful or she looks great, but I'm sharing that vulnerability, that moment that I went through during that picture that I took. And that's where I'm trying to open the conversation. You know, you can't judge a book by its cover. There's so much more to it. And I do have my struggles. There's so many body positive advocates and models that I do know from New York, and where we have conversations like this. And we still do have our issues. However, we're working on them and letting people know that without this conversation and advocating, it's not going to change anything.
It must be hard though, working, and I do want to get back to your steps, so try and keep me on track, but I keep picking up on things you're saying. It must be so hard to work on yourself publicly like that. I mean, I am out there sharing my stories of my struggles with anxiety and depression, and then I run into people who are like, I didn't realize that, or, oh, I heard you were having a hard time. And it's hard to put it out there, but at the same time, I feel like if I'm gonna be talking about mental health and taking care of yourself, I have to be honest about my own struggles. But I don't have, you know, however many hundreds of thousands of followers you have, so I don't have people necessarily saying negative things. But what's it like for you being out there, but actually saying, I'm not perfect, I'm still struggling, sometimes I don't like my body? What's that like?
It's difficult. I mean, when I started my journey 3 years ago about opening up about my story, it started with the mental health aspect, suffering with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. That was the door opener to say, okay, let me start sharing and being vocal about this, because everybody was like, but you look so normal. I'm like, what does mental health look like? And that's where I realized there's such a stigma. Well, you know how it is. There's always a stigma or this judgment because we're good at being moms. And we're not good at it all the time. It's because people don't see our struggle when we're by ourselves. So I said, okay, I need to start this conversation. And then I realized body positivity and body negativity, especially in the modeling world, is huge. And I started modeling when I was like 13 years old. So I dealt with being a size 1 or 2, being told that I was too big.
It's just like insane. And the things that those poor girls are doing, I remember that Portia de Rossi, one time I saw an interview with her, and it was in her book, where she was eating Kleenex to fill her stomach.
Or cotton balls,
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible what is happening. I mean, thankfully I never developed an eating disorder, but I still have the mind, that dysmorphia that goes on. So how do you do that when those trolls are, you know, writing comments to you? How are you maintaining your positivity and, like, you know, just letting that bounce off and block? Or do you still sometimes, does it sit, you know, permeate within you and you have to like work through it?
I've learned how to deal with it, and I've learned, I'm like, okay, there are people that are going to sit behind their telephone or their computer and they're going to have comments, and a lot of these people are just negative and mean. So I just realized that there's nothing that I can do about that, because the amounts of positive comments that I get from moms, from women, from people's husbands that are like, can you speak to my wife? You know, I wish that she would understand that it doesn't matter if she's had a child or a stretch mark, she's beautiful to me and I don't know how to get through to her. Or moms that are like, you know, my daughter is struggling, she wants to become a model, however, she's comparing herself to other people. And that was the next step I was going to talk about, was comparison. Is we need to stop as women comparing ourselves to other people and comparing ourselves to what we see on social media. It's such a negative thing to do. We are never going to look like Kim Kardashian or Chloe or anybody that's out there. We are who we are. And I always say, listen, whatever they chose to do to make themselves look better and feel better, that's up to them. You know, I'm not against plastic surgery if that's what you choose to do with the right mindset. If you choose to do it with a negative mindset by saying, oh, I want to get a new husband or a new boyfriend, so I'm going to buy, you know, a bigger butt or bigger boobs, then there's a problem there and you need to take a look at that. However, in the, you know, the life of social media, women are constantly looking at other women and saying, oh my God, I wish I had, oh, I wish I had. And we have to get out of that and start appreciating ourselves and understanding that we are good enough as we are. I mean, everybody can, you know, make adjustments and be better versions of themselves from eating better, exercising. And that's what I'm really talking about now is, you know, eating well, eating cleaner, taking care of your body, especially as we get older. It's so important. And when you do that, the mind switches. Because I've noticed, I've been in the bad headspace of eating badly and abusing my body essentially because of internet trolls making me feel badly when I was in a bad headspace. And now that I'm eating better and I'm taking care of myself and I'm taking pole fit classes to kind of, you know, feel stronger and feel better. It's so much fun and it's so empowering. And there's so many women in that class and with so many amazing stories. And I'm like, you know what? I need to continue to have this conversation and have women understand that you don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. Even the person that looks so perfect online is not. And a lot of them are really unhappy because I've met some of them and they have so much going on to continue this facade almost.
Yeah. Well, you see that, I mean, only because, you know, celebrities obviously have a wider reach, but you see a lot of, you know, celebrities who end up killing themselves or have addiction problems. And, you know, from the outside, it looks like, oh, their life is perfect. You know, how could it have led to this sort of, you know, depression and hopelessness? But it's true. I mean, what we see on the outside has nothing to do with that internal experience. Like, it might be surprising for someone to hear that I stand in front of the mirror and turn sideways 1,000,000 times a day. One of the things, because I know you have kids, that I am very conscientious about, and I don't know if I'm doing a good job or not. I guess I'll find out later when my kids end up in therapy and then call me in for a joint session about all the ways I've wronged them. But when it just comes to body image, you know, I'm trying really hard to not use, you know, say negative things about myself. I'm trying really hard to just talk, you know, present like I love myself and I'm happy with how I am, because I'm so worried that my kids, my son and my daughter, both my son too, will grow up feeling like they're not enough, you know, and they'll be judging themselves. How are you doing that with your own children to ensure that they're not focusing on their value being their outside exterior when here you are modeling, showing your exterior? How are you giving them those lessons?
Well, I always show them I'm a model with brains. I'm well educated, so I always push that on my daughter. You have to have a great education. Get into sports, you know, be diverse in that. Don't focus on everything, you know, about your whole appearance. I know, you know, it's difficult, 12 years old, and she looks like she's 15, and she's trying to understand the, you know, the changes that are happening right now. Myself, when I have my own issues, I don't express it in front of her. I do have conversations with my fiance. I'm like, you know, babe, today I'm feeling like this, to get it out, you know, because it's important to get those conversations out. And if he's tired of hearing it, which I'm sure sometimes he is.
Every husband is tired of hearing their wife vent about something or other.
So then I call like my best friend, because we've had, you know, many conversations. And I told her, I said, it's funny. I've been more confident, you know, when I was pregnant. I was so happy being pregnant. I was, you know, strutting my stuff in little dresses and wearing heels and bikini. I said, then it's like after. For me, it was really, when I turned 40, it was just so weird. My mind just switched, and I was like, I'm not 20 anymore, you know, that whole thing. But now I'm learning to understand, no, 40 is amazing, you know, and there's so much that comes with it. And I understand that my body's never going to be like what it was when I was 20. And I'm accepting that. And it's perfectly fine. I just want to be, you know, a great 40. I want to be happy in my skin. So I'm doing the necessary things to make myself feel good about myself. Whether it's, let me buy a piece of lingerie that I like for me, not for the hubby. I think he's going to like anything anyway. But for me, that I like on my body, that I can look and say, wow, I look great. I take the time sometimes, even if I'm just at home, to do my makeup, even if I'm just at home, like in my sweats, so I can look in the mirror and say, hey, I look great, you know, instead of saying, well, I look great today, but no, I look great today. So it's the little things, and it's retraining the brain. So my daughter does see those little habits that I do. And I think it's kind of resonating with her, because sometimes I see her at home, she's just doing her eyebrows and she's walking around. I'm like, your eyebrows are on fleek, honey. She's like, I know, you know. So I think that's the thing, is if we're all going to have negative body images at one point or another, men and women. Okay. I think it's the way we express it. I think if we choose not to express it in front of our children, some people might say, well, it's being fake. No, it's not expressing those things, because you may have a child that might be confident, whether she gains or loses weight, he or she. But then hearing us complaining about our weight consistently and constantly might create, well, maybe I should start looking at myself more. So I would say, like, either write it down in a journal, how you're feeling, write down the things that you can do to change, because body positivity or negativity, it is a mental thing.
Well, I also think too, I mean, part of it is internal, and that we need to like keep it to ourselves. And I think now my daughter, she's 13 and a half, and we have some incredible conversations. We have a great relationship, and she does hear me now make comments that she didn't hear me make, let's say, even 2 years ago. I think what I need to start doing is maybe reframing that about my body is changing as I get older. We all know our shape literally is changing, and I'm at the end of my 40s. So menopause is around the corner. So there's all these other changes that are going on. And I think it's also good for her possibly to hear my process as my body is changing, so that when she gets to that place, she's not like, oh, it's supposed to be so easy. My mom never talked about it. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is.
I think that's a good point, because my mother did share with me going through menopause, and she did it naturally.
I'm not going through menopause.
I know she's not. No, but even when you start getting into those stages where the body is changing, it's important to have discussions. It truly is, because if my mother didn't start talking to me when she started, the beginning stages of the little hot flashes, she's like, no, it's not coming. It's too early. She was like in her late 40s, she said, because I had a conversation with her recently because I wanted to know. I had met a young woman, 30 years old, was full on menopause. She had a rare disorder. She started at 26.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was like, my goodness. I went to my mom and said, Ma, when did you and Nana start? I'm like, okay, I'm calculating, because I know it's difficult on the body and it takes a toll on the body. And it's another thing, because it's kind of like realizing there's going to come a point where as women we can't have children anymore, and that sometimes is difficult. Sometimes we think about it, we see a baby, and we're like, wouldn't it be so nice, And it's the changes. However, it's embracing. I've learned now to start embracing the changes that are happening in my life. The other day, my natural, because I'm not a natural blonde, my brown hair came out, and for the first time, I found 3 gray hairs. I was like, wow. I said, I wonder what I would look like if I was like silver. And I took it in a positive rather than, oh my goodness, I have 3 gray hairs, I have to get rid of them. I'm starting to appreciate myself getting older. I'm starting to feel more comfortable, because I'm seeing, a lot of young women that are not comfortable, and I'm walking around, and there was one girl that approached me downtown. She's like, my goodness, you're so beautiful and confident. She's like, how do you do it? I'm like, how old are you? She's like, I'm 21, and all the pressure. And she's like, I said, I'm 41, so I'm 20 years older than you. She's like, I would have never guessed. She's like, it's the confidence too. I said, I have my bad days. However, I'm choosing to start my day well. I'm not for everybody. I know that some people would like me to have long hair. Some people prefer me to have black hair. I understand I'm not for everybody. And when you learn to understand and accept who you are, you stand stronger. When you start doing things that make you feel good about yourself, like my pole fit class, I'm telling you, girl, I'm like,
I want to come do that.
I feel, you should. I feel so strong. I feel so confident. I feel it's changed me. It really has. Going to the gym is one thing, but pole fit, I'm realizing that it's doing something positive. And having conversations like this, I have so many conversations like this with men and with women. I have them with my boys as well, because they have female friends that are having body issues.
Well, and they might have body issues too. And I think that's something that's not talked a lot about. When my daughter and I were watching RuPaul. I don't know if you watch RuPaul.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Love that show. And recently there was just an episode where they started, one of the girls was talking about how when she was growing up, she had this eating disorder. And then they start this whole thing about the gay community and what's happening with eating disorders. I was like, we don't really talk about it a lot. And I see my son, he's 10. He's constantly looking at himself in the mirror going, oh, my six pack, my six pack. I'm like, it doesn't matter if you have a six pack or not, but already he's focused on his body, and he's 10, like, oh, I'm strong. Like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're strong or not. Whether or not you have the six pack that's visual or not has nothing to do with the strength you have. But just to back up for a second, I like how you were saying that you found an activity that showed your strength. And I think that's what the trapeze has done for me too, because even though I shouldn't say, oh, even though I'm 49, still what I'm able to do and the strength that I can show while flying through the air is incredible. And in those moments, I do feel really good and strong. And I think as I've gotten older, internally, I'm stronger and more confident, but I haven't quite connected that with the external changes that are happening. Like, I like the inside of myself, but I'm not so happy with what's happening on the outside. I admit I'm still really struggling with those changes.
I'm struggling less now. At the end of last year, I was really struggling after doing the real catwalk and, prancing in Times Square.
Was it cold, by the way?
It was so cold.
When you were out there, I was like, God, that looks cold.
It was like, I think...
Yeah, check it out, the real catwalk. It happened in New York. And anyways, Lana was there, strung her stuff. That was an amazing event, by the way.
Well, we actually did it. It was planned by Cristiano, who is on Cycle 24's America's Next Top Model, my little Russian princess. She did it the day before the Victoria's Secret fashion show, so she picked that date on purpose. So it was amazing because, as you saw, there was everybody from LGBTQ, whether you're in a wheelchair. So it was really about pushing back, and it was funny because apparently it didn't do well, their fashion show the next day.
Oh, wow.
Go read, if you go Google it and read about it, somebody from one of the, I think it was the Washington Post, that said it wasn't even worth viewing because it was so much negativity about it. People opened their eyes because we did a flash mob essentially.
Yeah.
We had over 55,000 people turn up and watch. All the media was there, and they were like, my goodness, this is an amazing stand to take. But I was not at my best. I think I was at pretty much one of my heaviest, besides after having a child or being pregnant. That was the heaviest I'd ever been. I was 35 pounds over my natural weight. I wasn't paying attention to it. I was just, okay, I'm not in a great headspace right now. My depression is really kicking in. It was a few things going on, getting rid of toxic friends and their energy in my life. And it was so much going on. And I was overeating and emotionally, I wasn't there. But I was happy to be in that environment with so many amazing people. And it was after, when you look at that one picture of yourself and you're like, who's that? I was like, who's that? And I couldn't believe it was me. And I got so depressed. And I was like, no, I have to do something about this. Why did I let myself get to this point? I'm always, taking care of myself. And that's when I realized there was a disconnect between me mentally and physically as well. And I had to fix that. So in January, I took a time off from social media for 3 weeks. And I was like, I need to fix me. I need to stay away from everything social media because we're always on our phones. And I needed to figure out what was going on. And I figured out what it was. I was allowing other people's toxicity to get to me. And it was affecting me in a way that I wasn't taking care of my body. And then internally, I was looking at myself going, who is this person? So since then, not a long time, I started redoing the work I was doing before. And understanding, okay, I gained a little bit of weight. It's not the end of the world, if you eat better. And I kind of found ways not to focus on the things like, okay, now you have cellulite. Okay, you have a couple more stretch marks. Like the little things. I stopped saying it was such a bad thing. I said, I earned my stripes. I have 4 kids. I should be proud of my stripes, I find ways to look at things in a positive way. I'm like, oh, I have a little belly. Now I can belly dance again. I'm always trying to find something. And it's a lot easier to do that than constantly beat yourself down because you get into this negative headspace, and then it's just like, it's downhill from there.
We really do need to be more loving towards each other and more gentle. I was having a very bad period myself recently, and I'm feeling much better now, but for about 6 weeks' time, my anxiety was increasing, and I started having a little depression, which I'm normally not depressed, but it was all kind of coming together, and I was beating myself up about it, like, oh, what's wrong? My husband said, you are so nice to everybody else. You don't even show the same niceness toward yourself. Would you be saying this to your friend who was telling you she was struggling? Like, well, of course not. He's like, why aren't you as nice to yourself? And I'm hoping that's one of the takeaways is we need to be nice to ourselves, forgive ourselves, be gentle. We're not always in the best space. That's okay. And just continue to strive to move forward. And I just want to say as we're ending, if you are having any concerns about your own health in terms of your body image, overeating, undereating, bulimia, anorexia, those kinds of things, please get help. Talk to a therapist right away, call for help, tell a family member, tell a friend, and get yourself help because certainly it can affect your overall health. And then you can start working on your mind too. Thank you so much.
We need to continue having this conversation.
Let's do it again. We have a lot of stuff to talk about.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.